Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you everyone for joining us again for another episode of Sessions with the Sayyid. Sayyidina, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Alaikum
barakatuh.
assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you, Ahmed?
Alhamdulillah, it's good to have you here
It's
once
always
again.
good to talk with you.
Alhamdulillah. So today's topic is one that brings a lot of maybe controversy on one end, but on the other, one that needs to be discussed for sure. And it's the interactions between male and females, the barriers. What are some issues that we see when men and women interact, especially in today's age and society? What are some issues that you see?
So the barriers between men and women.
Precisely.
What are some issues?
Yeah, what are some
What are-
issues that you see?
What are some issues that don't exist
Yeah.
in this regard? Men and women need to be responsible, mature, to know that there are boundaries. On a secular level, we've separated men's washrooms from women's locker rooms. So we all know that there is segregation, and that term is always negative. But we must segregate for the purposes of decency, not because of ethnicities, which is the haram type that we see. We can talk about civil rights, for example. Of course, that is something we don't endorse, to separate people based off of just who they are. Rather, separating to preserve a society that doesn't corrupt itself when men and women begin to cross one another as if there are no differences. No one will tell you that they enjoy having, for example, a man walk into them as they're changing in the changing room, as opposed to having other women that are among them. It's an easier process. And there are men that should be more aware and alert that this space is only for men for privacy reasons. So for privacy, we've already established there's a place for segregation here of the genders, by the way. Not necessarily because of background, religiosity, even though there are some places where we need to distinct. This is an area Muslims observe their worship. For example, a masjid, we can't bring in, for example, someone into like Masjid al-Haram who was a non-Muslim. So these are common sense things. Now when we look into social interaction, I think that's where we find more areas that need to be highlighted. What are the extents? How much is too much? There's a lot to say to that.
Yeah, so I think nowadays what we see is people are very comfortable with one another, even if they're non-mahram to each other. I can obviously throw out a lot of examples of what I've seen. I know people who definitely aren't mahram to each other, and they're very comfortable with even touching the other person, which from the Islamic perspective is haram, which you would agree to. So how do we establish a barrier in itself to prevent things like this from happening?
So while there are barriers, there are definitely cases and circumstances where it's okay, it's appropriate, it's fine that in a professional manner there is a interaction happening between men and women. It's not an issue. But I think where the ambiguity lays is with family. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree.
Like the
with
whole
that.
cousins aspect. She's my cousin, he's my cousin. Beyond that, I've seen them grow up. I've seen her before she was a muhajjiba, for example. What's the big deal? It is still a condition that must be observed. Maybe you grew up together. The reality is, she ain't your wife, she's not your sister.
But Sayyidina, I have people,
Right.
or I know people who their family members will tell them, but they're like your brother, they're like your sister.
So
you
they
grew up
even
with
just
them.
admitted they're like. They're not are, they're like. So if they're like, I can make anything like my whatever. People don't have any boundaries when it comes down to their own feelings and intuitions. This is like my brother. This is probably their pet dog. You know, I see that's what people say. Am I making something up? People look at their animals like family members,
Yeah.
right? So I can't help it when I see maybe a pet that I have owned for many years, say it's like a bird or whatever. I can say, oh, it's a member of our family. I say that, but it's not really a member where there's inheritance now, that we all have a responsibility to take care of things that live with us, that we are watching over, responsible for. But Allah has distinguished the family. The dynamics are unique. This attitude is a weird one, where it's like, because we're cousins, we can now come close with each other. No, you can't. and come close under what circumstance and context. I think there's room for that to discuss. Say, for example, in like work, can women and men interact in work? First of all, is it okay for women to go to work? Is that okay? What do you think?
I personally think it's fine for women to work if that's what they so choose to do.
If they want to do it, and if they're not violating anything in regards to their deen, what's the issue with that? If there's no haram being done, there really is no issue. But now, am I in a circumstance where it's more likely that I begin to mingle and banter with members of the opposite sex? By doing so, I become more acquainted with this man than my own husband, for example. Ideally, that shouldn't be the case. That's why we're permitted to interact. Say, I can interact with another girl out there under professional circumstances and settings. Whether it's in a Q&A situation, if it's at work, if it's at school. Islam didn't tell you build a brick wall between you and every girl that's out there if you're a guy, or a brick wall between you and every guy that's out there if you're a girl. You have to be, realistic at the same time. Life is different for everyone. So in that context, the family dynamic is where most people tend to not necessarily draw lines. Cousins, while they are family, Allah has given exception to the nuclear family, who are the children of your mother and father, be them from the same mother or father that you share, or from another relationship that they had in the past. If they share at least one of your parents, they're mahram for you. They're fine. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, great granduncles, grandmothers, and that dynamic, you're mahram for them. It's fine. You don't have to wear hijab. If you're a sister, don't worry too much, etc. But anything beyond that, cousins are nice. I love my cousins. But I can't say that I have a love and a romance like I do a bromance, for example, a sister mance. I don't know how you.
I don't know the term for that either.
For my female cousins. Why? Because there are mahram laws that need to be considered here. These ladies ultimately are ladies that can get married, that I could even potentially marry. In Islamic law, we allow for the marrying of cousins. It's not something we hide, although it's something that's discouraged, by the way, because the family pool is really close. So it's not recommended, it's discouraged. Although some might say, and then what are you saying? Imam Ali alayhi salam's married to Sayyid Zahra. She is his first cousin once removed. So Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen, who are they to each other?
They are first cousins.
They're cousins.
Yeah.
They're paternal first cousins. Abu Talib and Abdullah are brothers. Abu Talib has Amir al-Mu'mineen Abdullah Ridwanullahi alayhima had Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah and Imam Ali are cousins. But the age difference is many. About 30 years difference between the Prophet and Imam Ali. The Prophet has a daughter. So my cousin's daughter, first cousin, once removed. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen married her. And this is normal. It's not considered abnormal in Islamic law, and it shouldn't be. We shouldn't make abnormal what God has made normal.
So would you say that society may have changed the perception of how we view things like this? Because maybe in today's society, we don't look at it as our cousins as someone that could be someone that we could potentially marry.
But we don't encourage. Why? Just because of the whole family gene kind of situation, it may lead to more issues. But aside from that, at the end of the day, she was non-mahram to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Ali then married her. Why? Because she, to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, is not from his nuclear family. So that being said, anyone that I can technically, this is probably a good dynamic, marry, I should maintain the laws of gender distance Islamically like I would with the general public. Yeah, there's more familiarity, my family, you share the aunts that I share, you share even the same grandparent, but still, if I can end up being in a relationship with such people, then I need to maintain those boundaries and barriers. There's no lax rule because she's a cousin or he's a cousin. There's no restrictions are less. There really isn't. Ultimately, the rules don't bend or change there. But let's say back to the real world examples.
I can throw out an example if you want me to. I know that people nowadays are very comfortable with online interactions because they may feel like the person isn't actually physically with them, but they are speaking online. So what are some issues that we can find with that, and maybe what are some solutions?
So what are issues do you think you can find with like an online interaction?
I think the rule, regardless, the one that you say when there's two of you alone in a room, the third person's always shaitan.
Yeah.
So I think it even applies to online as well.
Even a chat room,
Definitely, I think it's still
even
there
like
regardless.
DMs,
Of course.
sliding into them. Shaitan's also sliding there too.
He's also joining you. In
He's
there
also
as well.
sliding.
He's the one sliding in with you.
Smallah.
But I think that's
The rules
an issue.
apply, basically.
Yeah, the rules apply no matter what room, if you want to put quotes around that, what room it is, the shaitan's always going to be the third person in that room. So what are some solutions maybe that some people who are doing this or who want to try to find a solution for this, what can we give to them?
So the online world is more hazy than real world examples. Because in the real world, if I'm alone with someone, I end up with a Nabi Yusuf Zulaykha situation where one might want to impose themselves on the other. That is a risk, right?
Definitely.
It is a risk. Not online. Online, it's not a risk. That risk has been removed. What does stay as a risk is the possibility of me speaking in a manner that is not befitting to speak when I talk to someone that is from the opposite gender. You can express using emojis, unnecessary, impermissible, not befitting, sending this emoji combination with that emoji to a girl, for example. That's not right. In addition to that, it's an interesting point that you say, well, in the online world, shaitan will also be involved. That's so true. That's so true. Because he could use it as a wasila for him, because internet is a lot more easygoing than the real world, because I can only do so much in the real world, but online I'm a lot more open, because who cares? It's online. It's just a chat. I can delete. So you're more likely to say what you feel, as opposed to in real life you have to hold yourself back and reserve them. These are called keyboard warriors. They're only strong when it comes to text, but if they meet you, they're chickens. Now someone might get more confidence and be like, let me just send a message to this girl. That's inappropriate. If it's a message, it's not appropriate. Not saying it's haram to send messages to girls and things like that, especially if it's for good reasons. Some people might be like, okay, let's say for example a sister messages me with a question, or on my Instagram. Shout out Insta Ahlul Bayt, right? There are many that want to collab. There are many that want to reshare their Islamic content on our profile and page. There are many that might extend invitations, and these are professional sisters that organize institutions that they spearhead and lead, which is a great thing. The involvement of our sisters in areas that maybe is usually male dominated is a great thing, but then that would mean that they have more interactions with men. There is no issue with that. There's no problem with that. So there's a room for this. You can have conversations, whatever. It's better to avoid being in a situation where you're a sister with another man and you're both non-maharam, right? So it's better to avoid that situation.
But what about the situations that you could say are unavoidable? For example, nowadays we have Uber. What if you're a woman that enters in an Uber with a man and you guys are alone?
You know, in some countries, they've resolved this one, I think in parts of like Malaysia, where you can request only female Uber or only female taxis. Not just there, even in the Middle East as well. I know some places where it's only females that drive. Other women feel more comfortable. So I could say, hey, men, avoid being with women, and men can be like, okay, fine. But then you don't realize what that means for some sisters. There are girls out there, they would not want to be inside a 4x3 room with another man. Every breath he takes, she can smell it, for example. Trapped in that car for the next hour. She wouldn't want that. I don't know this man. He could outpower me. He could drive somewhere else. I'm just trusting he's a good guy. There are women out there that wouldn't want to be in such situations. Now, I know it's not the norm, but many would feel more comfortable that they're with another sister, for example. Uber is fine.
What about...
No, hold on. It's fine. It's not an issue. She needs a ride. She can't really control who's going to pick her up. Even then, maybe it's better to have the guy driver, because let's say, for example, I saw that he has 5 stars, then the girl that has only 2 stars. Not to say that this gender drives better than the other gender. I don't want to get into that debate, but it's more for practicality and utility purposes at that point. I need your services. You happen to be a guy, and I need this because this is important. I need to get back home, for example. There's no issue with that. Sisters, you can take out your Ubers. It's totally fine. You can work in a shop where you have no choice to choose who is going to come and work with you. They happen to be my co-partner in this thing. It's not like I chose them, and it happens to be another guy. It's fine, but you need to make sure that you always maintain your decorum, your professionalism, as a man and even as a girl. So it's normal, it's fine. There's a preference to maintaining a degree of distance, and even a preference of, if it's not necessary, it would be better to avoid and abstain from, just to safeguard one another. I'll tell you this. Oh man, this one might be a bit heavy, but it's quite complicated, if not impossible, for men to become simply best friends with women and not have an interest beyond cordial friendship. You know, they want more than that. As men, we know the way the world works as a guy, from a guy's perspective. No guy will share with another girl the same amount of time he will share with his bros and his friends, except if there is possibly an intention to do something beyond that. There could be an intention for marriage. That's healthy, but you have to be clear. You don't want to end up breaking a girl's heart. I thought we were coming closer. I thought this was an opportunity. He was so nice to me. It turns out he only wanted one thing, and then he took advantage and left. You don't want that. So as a guy, you have to be responsible. Man up shwaya, be mature. This is not your masculine prerogative to take advantage of other people. They're not bodies for you to take advantage of. Make it clear. Listen, I will only be comfortable with you speaking outside of the world of professionalism because I have this intention. And I want to take this and be conscious of Allah at the same time. I don't want to disappoint God. So would you be willing to get to know each other, for example? That's fine. But you don't do that without making it clear from the beginning, because then this girl may have the wrong understanding. Of course, the sister should know that the man shouldn't be cozying up to her for no reason. You're cozying up to her, and then you cozy up to her, and you cozy up to your wife, and you cozy up to whatever. Where's your shame and dignity, man? You don't just mess around with other people's women like that. By the way, the man that's cozying up to other women without the intention of marriage, cozy up to a lady who's married to a man, don't run into that man on the street. Cozy up to my lady, cozy up to your lady, for example. Cozying up, acting warm, acting kind, and she doesn't want that. What can she say? If it's another guy out there who seems like he's not someone that's going to accept no for an answer, then she has to, be quiet, stay complacent. Oh, it's better for sisters to bring help in circumstances and atmospheres where a guy's hitting on her. This is what we're talking about. Say, for example, she has a husband, and this guy is just cozying up to her left, right, and center. Watch what's going to happen, man. So, first of all, respect other people's women. Respect women in general, for goodness sake. If she's not married, she's going to get married. Forget all that. She does not have a father. She does not have a brother. She does not have anything. Forget family. She is not herself. Dignified, distinguished. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. The children of Adam, indistinguishable. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا وَإِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِندَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The best among you from the genders, most God conscious. She's not God conscious. You can't just go around and talk to people like that as a guy. Likewise, the world is not, one-way thinking. Women also. There are women that hit on other people. There are women that make allegations of other men for reasons, unbeknown. Either they were interested in the guy and the guy wasn't interested in her. I mean, we have to wake up and smell the coffee. These things exist, right? There are ladies that gossip and will make lies and virtually tarnish a man's name simply because he showed no interest in her, and the word will spread that this guy likes to do this, he likes to hit on other people, he likes to etc., and just ruin a man's name because he didn't meet your expectation. Who cares? People need to wake up and be mature and kind and polite. So there is interaction, but for these reasons, interaction outside of necessity will lead to a lot of problems. Many problems will come, many of them. And ultimately, a person needs to safeguard themselves, safeguards their faith, safeguards their akhlaq. Here's a question to you. Can I have a girl that's a friend?
I don't believe you can.
Why not?
As you mentioned before, once you start, feeling a little too comfortable with them, it could turn into something that shouldn't be, because you could do something haram.
Could I have a friend that's a girl who's married to another man? Do you think the man will be allowed, acceptable?
He would not be happy at all.
You think he'll be okay with that? Some guy, you and her are just going out to the movies, but we're not in a relationship.
I don't think a single man out there would be happy with hearing that.
So what kind of man are you if you're complacent to that?
That's a man with no dignity, with no ghira. No.
Exactly. No ghira, no dignity, no self-respect, no khusuma. We use these words, we throw them a lot, especially the Iraqi community. No sharaf. Who do you think you are, etc. And that's not just culture. That's the prerogative of men and women, that we know that you're not going to play with people. You can have friends who are your bros, and a girl can have friends that are her sisters. They support one another, and truly only sisters will know the struggle of other sisters. I won't be able to comprehend it. I don't know what a girl goes through all the time. I could hear it, but I don't live through it, so that I can have common denominators with a sister, such that I can be her friend on a regular, on a daily, on an etc. However, keeping in mind the fact that Allah has put boundaries. One hadith says, narrated by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will imprison, this hadith is deadly, will imprison a person who flirted in haram context with a girl X amount of years for every letter that they used when flirting. So let's say, for example, they used the whole sentence. I say X amount of years because I think the narration either said something to the effect of 5,000 to 9,000 years for every letter, but I'm not too sure right now. Every letter that was used. Hi, that's H-I. How are you? You want to talk? You look good. I like the smell that you... All these things. Really creepy sentences, by the way. Every letter, Allah will hold a person accountable for that amount of time, because it's not something you can just take advantage of. Have some honor, have some dignity. Now, if a person wants to come in with the context of marriage and zawaj, it's a different deal, inshallah ta'ala. There are ways to do this. But ultimately, you want to honor and respect others. That's all Islam came to do. Makarim al-akhlaq. Innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq. I was dispatched to fulfill the most sublime of mannerism. Mannerism here dictates there has to be some boundaries between our interaction, but there is room for professionalism, for an association, a business relationship, a kind interaction. It's like I can't not be kind, right? Hi, good morning, how are you? These sort of things. This is normal, and society accepts these as gestures that are positive. In that range, it's fine. But with other intentions, sub to the intention of marriage and having a relationship, beyond that, that's just a sanctum full of flaws waiting to be opened.
So this should be a wake-up call then for a lot of people, because
so,
it
man.
seems to be something very normal in today's society. So inshallah, all of this advice and tips that you have given us can help improve how we act day to day as human beings
Inshallah.
and interacting with the opposite gender. And with that, I thank you, Sayyidina, for taking the time out of your day and helping us with this.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Alaikum
barakatuh.
assalam, habibi.